Welcome back. I'm Alfred Lambermont Weber, and today we're privileged to have a very extraordinary guest, Mel Vey, who is the co-founder, along with her husband, and of CCN, which is an unusual network. It's a collective news network, the Creative Consumer Network. Mel, welcome.
Thank you, Alfred.
And you've come on our program today because, as you know, we've published two articles regarding the events in Hampstead. And I say events because there's a growing kind of urban sociology, criminology, perhaps genocide around them, along with psyops and memes that are growing as well, perhaps. And you had mentioned to me that you and your husband, who co-founded CCN, had occasion to live in the Hampstead area, and you wanted to make some observations. So you have read the release by Anonymous online that we at newsinsideout.com, along with many others, published, and you have seen a lot of the data. So please, could you share with us how it is that you came to live in Hampstead and what your observations were at that time?
Sure. My husband and I had met living in London, and we'd moved out of the Earl's Court area where we'd been living for a couple of years, and we decided to move north into North London. And the Hampstead area is really, really beautiful, and one of the reasons why we decided to settle there was because of the heath. I love walking and I love nature, and we decided that this would be great for fitness. So we actually acquired ourselves an apartment right on the road that sort of leads perpendicular to the heath, and it was called Downshire Hill. We lived at number 4A Downshire Hill, and almost immediately from when we moved there, I started to notice certain things that, had I the knowledge that I have today, would have made a lot of sense to me. But there were things that went on during the 5-year period that we lived in that area, and we did live in a lot of different addresses throughout that area. And I must just sort of give you an overview of how it's kind of laid out. You've got on the one side, you've got Hampstead, and then you've got this thing called Hampstead Heath, which is just it's a very hilly, up and down, lots of trees, nature reserve area. But I'll get back to that because it's very important. And if you look at it topographically from above, it's in a bit of a triangle shape. So down the one side of this heath, you've got Hampstead. Hampstead Heath is named after Hampstead, of course. And then you've got Highgate, which is on the other side. And Highgate is also very important. In fact, the Hampstead and Highgate kind of pretty much are one and surround this heath area. When we first moved there, one of the things we noticed from some of the people that we met was this distinctive, and I'll give you an example of someone particularly and why this is important. This one woman that we had the misfortune of meeting and dealing with, and I won't get into too much detail. She was a producer for Endemol Productions. Now, Endemol is the company that produces Big Brother. So to give you the link there, now to be a producer of a show like this, you must obviously be, I don't know, indoctrinated or inculcated or initiated into something. Her husband was, or partner, I'm not sure if they were married, was a banker. And she's the kind of person who would call you up and cause drama because she liked to get that energetic suction of you. And afterwards she would say, oh, don't worry, I'm only joking. I just kind of want to see how you reacted. And what I found with cultists is that it's all about energy manipulation. And this is the kind of thing they'll do. They'll torture people to watch them suffer. And this is what I very much felt was happening with this woman. And this is one of the first sort of friends acquaintances that we had there, we started to notice this pattern in the people that lived around there, which is very odd. And, you know, having traveled a lot, having backpacked through Europe and the Mediterranean, I made friends pretty easily. And all the time we lived there, we actually have no friends, people that we now know from that period of time, from that 5-year period of time, because we struggled to connect or bond. There seemed to be a very distinctive cliques within the Hampstead Highgate area, which also has a large proportion of Jewish people that live there. In fact, Golders Green is on the other side of Hampstead Heath. I said it's like a triangle, it's like three-sided, but Golders Green is the known Jewish area of Hampstead. And we used to go walking on this heath all the time for fitness, and we sometimes would come across some very secluded areas, very secluded, and the only way I can describe what we found there was kind of like stone circles, stones placed in circles, twigs placed like in huts, and looked like there had been something going on, some kind of rituals or ceremonies. There were stone altars as well, just like in the middle of these circles. And very not knowing what I know now, back then, we're talking around from a period of between 2002 till about 2007. I knew even then that there was something. I used to say, this is which I used to joke with my husband and say, this is witchcraft and stuff that's going on here, because just from what I'd seen in films, you know, I could pretty much gather this is something else, that we don't know what this really is all about. But what's interesting is on Hampstead Heath, you also have something called Kenwood House, and a number of very, what I'd call elitist type old style Victorian houses and mansions and castles surrounding this heath. Okay, George Michael has a home right on the edge of the heath. There's a number of very famous television and music industry folk who have homes in this area, and these Gothic, and I must say, one of the most amazing things about Hampstead is it has some of the most beautiful houses in London, a lot of very Gothic looking castle type things, turrets, and you can be sure anything that's kind of got that kind of Illuminati architecture most likely has some form of ritualized something going on in it. One of the other things which is very interesting to note, of course, as I said, Highgate is on the other side. You have Highgate Cemetery. Now, the road that connects Hampstead to Highgate around the top of the heath has a pub on it called the Spaniards Inn. And this is extremely important because it's one of the oldest pubs in London. The food there is really excellent. But why it is interesting is because this is the place where Abraham Stoker, better known as Bram Stoker, Freemason, wrote his book Dracula. And he based a large proportion of the events in Highgate Cemetery. Now, if you go down the road further go down Swain's Lane towards Highgate Cemetery, this is no ordinary cemetery. It's probably one of the creepiest places I've ever seen. In fact, I believe it's one of the most haunted places in London. If you're into that sort of thing, you can look it up on a website. It's rated as one of the top 10 most haunted places in London. I've heard all sorts of stories from eyewitnesses about strange creatures that frequent that place, everything from vampiric-looking creatures to grey creatures to reptilian-looking creatures. In fact, there's a part of the cemetery that's closed off that has pyramids, and I'm absolutely positive, and I have heard stories that there are rituals that go on underground, and these pyramids in the closed off part of the cemetery are actually where people enter into these tombs where they're having these rituals. Now, my honest belief here is, Alfred, is yes, it's a terrible thing what's happened with the schools, and I don't think that it's made up. What I think is this is just what is happening. The same thing with Jimmy Savile, the same thing with all those people who have now been thrown to the public. This is just a distraction from the real darkness and evilness that's going on there, and the real kingpin of all of this. That school is not the only school where it's going on. Christchurch is not the only church where that's going on. There's a number of churches in the Hampstead area where I'm absolutely convinced that all this sort of stuff is going on. The Roslyn Hill Church, which has been renovated for years, and it stands right next to the Hampstead Welfare Hospital. I remember one day walking back from the tube station and walking past the church, and they've been renovating it for years. And suddenly they had all these white screens all the way around the church, and what looked like guys in forensic masks. You know, they had covers on their face. And I thought, did they find toxic waste or something there? And then I spoke to one of the nurses at the hospital, and she said that they actually found bodies under the church that had, you know, ritualistically been killed, children, all sorts. And, you know, when they'd been renovating the church, they'd obviously uncovered this big pile of bodies. And there's a lot of strange deaths that happen in Hampstead. For example, as I said, I lived at number 4A, Downshire Hill, just slightly further down at number 8 when I was living there. And this is a big mansion of a house, is number 8. There was a man who lived there who was killed. And when we asked how he was killed, and there was a police officer standing outside, he wasn't saying anything, but the neighbors were saying he was tortured to death in his own home. It's a lot of strange murders. There's always bodies being found on the heath. A very famous Vogue photographer was found in the ladies' swimming pools, I think it was in 2013. And this is a common thing, dog walkers finding bodies all over the heath. It seems to be a dumping ground. So there's something going on there. Whether the school is it or just a symptom of a much bigger problem, this is what I believe, but there is something going on in that place. Oh, there's one more thing that's probably of great interest. And as I said, I lived in Downshire Hill Road, and what I found very interesting, I didn't know what the Freemasons were at the time, but we had a pub on the corner of Downshire Hill Road called the Freemasons Arms. Now, this place actually had on what looked like the ground level, the top part of the pub, which is all beautiful old English pub, wooden, big fireplaces, really good food. And then there was a downstairs area where there was said to be a 200-year-old skittle alley, which we were never, ever able to access. But we had seen people going into the basement part, and I'm absolutely convinced that that was a Freemasons meeting house because it's called the Freemasons Arms. So there is a lot of very interesting stuff about this area. And I don't think that what's happened at the school is isolated by any measure of means. In fact, I think this coming out is just a symptom of a much bigger problem, and possibly, you know, I know how it has come out. I know the woman who has done all of this expose. I think that the fact that she's still alive and she's able to talk about this is absolutely amazing. But I really don't think this is it. I think it's much deeper than what they're saying.
Right. Now you've read the document that Anonymous put out, and it's fairly explicit. It says East Finchley swimming pool is amongst other meeting spots for satanic pedophile ring. The members of the ring attend swimming sex sessions, satanic ritual, blood sacrifice. The ritual is performed in an upstairs room in McDonald's on Mondays and Fridays. Do you think that that's credible? That document from what you know from that area?
Well, here's something that I found very ironic. That's the Jewish belt, Hampstead, Highgate, Golders Green, the Jewish belt. It was actually a Jewish man who told me that they take the bodies of children that they've killed in their Talmudic rituals, and they put them into McDonald's burgers. Isn't it ironic now all of a sudden that McDonald's is playing a part in this? Okay, so I don't think there's any coincidence there. There is another very interesting thing, which I think for me is a piece de resistance about what Hampstead Heath really is. there's a place on Hampstead Heath called Parliament Hill. And basically Parliament Hill overlooks south over London, and you can see all the way to Crystal Palace from Parliament Hill. It's called Parliament Hill because this is where they used to hold Parliament. Now, you've done a lot of research, Alfred. You know, on hills, this is where it used to be where sacred sites of ritual were, and it's been proven as well that governments and ruling people used to meet at these ritual sacred sites, and this is where parliaments and stuff were formed. And I actually don't think that Parliament Hill is a natural hill. I think it's a burial mound because there's tons of these things all over, the UK. All sorts of these things. Anywhere you find crop circles and stone circles, you'll find these sort of like Salisbury Mound. And I think this could be one of these ritualistic burial mounds. If not, it certainly has been used for all sorts of rituals and things in the past, because all these sort of things were always done on the top of hills. They're believed to be close to the heavens or God or whatever it was. But it is probably one of the focal points of this heath is this massive hill which overlooks the whole of London. And the fact that it's called Parliament Hill alludes exactly to its function, what it became, what it evolved from. And for me, it says a lot about what that area is actually really all about.
Right, right. At our news portal, we get comments on, for example, the release of the anonymous document by people that will say, "Oh, this is false. This is absolutely false. This is not occurring. If this were occurring, the parents would be in front of the school. They would be protesting. The medical authorities would have examined the children medically to determine if their, physical parts had been abused or disturbed." What is your assessment as to people's letters like this?
Well, to be honest with you, in an ideal world, we'd like to believe that when there is an injustice, that there will be those who will do the right things, do the examinations, take the evidence and follow through on it. This is how we would like to believe the world works. But it doesn't work that way, Alfred. If it did, you and I wouldn't be doing what we do. Okay? Simple fact is that that in order to be in a position of power, there has to be a certain amount of corruptibility about you. Otherwise, you just don't get there. Whatever the corruptibility is, whatever that fallible or that flaw is that they hook into, whether it be, you have a penchant for fiddling with little kiddies, or perhaps you like a bit of crack cocaine, or whatever it is, they will find what it is, and that's what they hook into. Perhaps, you have an ego and you like money and women, and they will find that thing, and that is what they will play to manipulate you and get you to do what they need to do and manipulate you into those positions of power, and you just don't get there unless you're playing that game. So yes, all those authorities are supposed to come and help. It would be nice. But let me tell you, I lived in London, and I sued 3 different companies for what I believe was various degrees of sexual harassment. And every time I lost. And then I actually spoke to someone who had been doing these kind of claims for a long time, and she said only 3% of all women who put sexual harassment claims in the workplace forward to the employment tribunals actually come out, come out having it won in their favor. There's more of a chance of them just sweeping it under the carpet and somehow finding a way for it to become socially acceptable. If only 3% of women who bring sexual harassment charges actually win their cases, what does that say about the society we're living in? And that's what I very much found when I was living in London, is that there is a very subtle, subversive attempt to put to play forward a very underhanded, malicious, malevolent degradation of people. It's almost subversively okay for this kind of thing to go on because they don't really prosecute it if only 3% of people are having that kind of thing go on. You know, if only 3% of people bringing those cases forward, any kind of sexual harassment case, actually have the claim end in their favor, it means that they're more likely to look the other way for these things. This is the point I'm trying to make. So if that can, I'm just using from my own experience, knowing what I know about the way it works and having lived in London for a long time and seeing the way things go down there, it doesn't surprise me at all because there is a lot of cognitive dissonance. This stuff is so horrific that I imagine a lot of mummies and daddies in Hampstead don't want to imagine this is going on. You know, the nice ones, that is. And to be honest with you, in the 5 years I lived there, I didn't find any that I liked. It's almost like within certain communities, even within big cities, there is a clique. It's something just beneath the perception of everybody, you know, because it's unspoken of. It's kind of only known between those who are involved in it. And you don't get, you know, in order for them to get away with this, they have to have everybody in the bag, from the police officers to the nurses, the doctors, and and then there's the Royal Free Hospital, which is the hospital in Hampstead. Let me tell you, there is so much that goes on there that is also very questionable. That I think, you know, at some stage we need to bring that into account and into full transparency. But I can only imagine that there would be people working there, the doctors and nurses, who would potentially be called upon to examine these kids, who potentially would also be in on the whole thing, you know?
Right. So to answer these critics who have been writing in and say that the whole thing is implausible, in the case of Hampstead, where you have the schools, the municipality, in other words, all the facilities, the police, the social services, the health, the hospitals, even the local newspapers and media are captured by this network, then there may well be children who have reported to their parents who have tried to get satisfaction from the school or satisfaction from the police or social services, and they end up losing their child, which is what happened to the mother here. And they didn't have videos that got released to the internet, so we don't know. I.e., what you're validating is that, yes, this is going on, and you don't need, and you're showing why it is that parents aren't parading outside. So good. So you've answered these letters of doubters from around the world that are writing in.
Well,
right.
I think that there does actually need to be a few people kicking off, anonymous, anybody based in London, get on the Northern Line, get off at Hampstead, and go out and protest outside the school. Make a noise, make it public. Get into the high street with banners and get in everybody's faces. Hampstead High Street's one of the really poshest high streets. It's beautiful. Right? The shops there are all very expensive, and the restaurants are lovely. And get out there with banners and make a noise about this stuff that's going on in your communities. I think the only way that we can put pressure on people to do something about it is to raise awareness within the communities. And I'm an optimist. I don't believe that everybody's bad. I believe that there would be some people within Hampstead and Highgate and Golders Green and that whole area who would be absolutely appalled and shocked at what is going on. I don't believe that, these satanic circles are sometimes quite exclusive. They don't include everybody. There are people on the outer who this would mortally offend. And it's to those people we need to reach out and say, you know, don't just go, oh, we'll leave it to somebody else to handle, because those people that you trust to handle it are probably in on it as well. It really is up to the citizens to get out there and make a noise and bring awareness to this. I mean, this is an amazing whistleblower moment about the sort of thing that's going on. And I'm sure that Hampstead is not the only place in London that this sort of thing is happening.
Right. And so how can people that are interested in following you and your news and your perspective, how can they get in touch with you and watch your news?
Well, I don't really get in front of the camera too much these days, Alfred. I only really do it for good friends like you when I feel there's important things to be shared. At the moment, I'm just behind the scenes producing CCN and creating a platform for everybody else. And but if people do want to get in touch and they do have information, you know, they're always welcome to get in touch with us, ccn@unseen.is, and you know, tune into Conscious Consumer Network whenever you're not watching Alfred's show.
Thank you, thank you. Well, good. I'm very, very glad that you were able to come to take time and come forward and share with us this story. And I really also want to commend you for founding CCN, which is a new concept in world news, the collective news network that all of its correspondents are co-creating. So I really want to urge our audience to start tuning into CCN.
Thank you, Alfred. Very kind of you.
Well, thank you very much then.
Thank you, Alfred. Great to chat to you again.
Good.